This is a Leading Through Challenge show. You're Grant Verhoeven. I'm Chris Desmond. We've just had a fantastic conversation, Grant, all about becoming invaluable as a leader. What can people expect from our chat today?
Yeah, it was awesome. Basically, it was about why it's really important to be an invaluable leader at the moment, particularly coming out of the lockdown. The second is around some of the tools and tips that you can use to become invaluable. And lastly, looking forward, how you can use some of those tools moving forward in what you do.
Grant Verhoeven, welcome to Leading Through Challenge, mate. How are you doing today?
Yeah, doing good, Chris.
Excellent, and it's a lovely Wellington day here, even though we are recording this over the virtual environment still. Who is Grant Verhoeven in a nutshell?
So I'm a dad. I've got two young children. I am a Wellingtonian. Went to Wellington College, and I run a practice that's focused around career development for leaders. And over the last sort of 10 years, I've been working in the career development space. And I've got a real passion for helping people get clear on what they do the best at work, whether or not that's individually, so they can find the work they really love, or as a team, they understand what they do the best as a team.
Yeah. And why does that aspect of leadership excite you the most?
That's a good question. I suppose it came from when I went through redundancy in my early 30s, and it was the first time, Chris, I got some professional career development advice. It was part of the outplacement, or they call it remodeling for redundancy. And it was the first time, even though I'd been to university and, got scholarships, awards, and worked, that somebody actually, took the time to help me understand what I was doing really well. And that sort of launched me into what I've been doing, which is really around the coaching and training and development. So I suppose that kind of gives me my energy, really.
Yeah. Cool. And Grant, we're recording this day one of level 2. We've been in lockdown for 7.5 weeks. I've lost count. And it's been reasonably scary times, and I think it is going to be reasonably scary times for people in a leadership capacity for a little while moving forward from here. But I know you've been talking a lot about being invaluable as a leader at the moment. Why should we be aiming for that? Why is that important?
Well, I've been talking to a number of my clients, a number of managers and leaders, and it's a real interesting sort of time at the moment. I suppose I was explaining it to somebody yesterday. It's like the world sort of tilted a few degrees on its axis in terms of work and leadership. And we're all sort of going back, retransitioning out after lockdown and trying to make sense of it. And so being invaluable as a leader is, practically speaking, it sort of came up with a conversation where people were talking about, are their jobs safe? This concept of sinking lid and what the impact will be in the next 3 to 6 months around the uncertainty. So,
sorry to cut you off. What do you mean by sinking lid?
All right, yeah, sinking lid. I don't know if you heard the term. What is it? Last in, first out, sinking lid by budgets. One of the managers I was speaking to, they'd lost 40% of their budget, and so in terms of revenue, so that has implications around being able to support staff, and it's a real focus at the moment from the people I'm speaking to around looking after their teams and their staff, keeping them safe, but that being a valuable part is making sure that when people get back into work, that they're doing a great job.
Yeah. And can you define invaluable a little bit more?
Yeah. I suppose the question is that around how to be invaluable, or what it actually
What
means?
it actually means in this context.
Yeah. I once heard that you're kind of paid in direct proportion to the problems that you can solve.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can solve more complicated problems, then you can actually charge more. And so that invaluable aspect when it comes to leadership, I think, comes down to the ability to lead, motivate, and inspire other people. In terms of if it's an individual aspect, it's being able to be great at what you do at work, but also be clear on what it is that, what are the problems that you're there to solve.
Yep. Okay. No, that makes sense. So, like, this is probably something that we should be thinking about all the time, not just right in this moment. But if we haven't been thinking about it before, how can we start to make ourselves invaluable? And what are some of the aspects that we need to be thinking about to do that?
I think if we're talking about a leadership point of view, the first thing is to check in with staff. I sort of use a model of the three E's that people either at this point coming back in, they might be excited and energetic. Their energy might be eroded, or they might be absolutely exhausted because they've been at home for 7 weeks trying to juggle being a full-time parent, teacher, worker. And so I think just number one is being aware and connecting in with members of the team and appreciating where they're coming from. That's from a leadership point of view. I think from an individual point of view, it's really, I work a lot with people who don't, they kind of have a sense of what they do really well. Like they understand some of their strengths they bring to the table, but once they sort of get a better appreciation of it and know what they can actually bring, do some reflection, it sort of allows them to get that clarity on where they should be focusing. And that's definitely been one of the things that I've seen over the last 6 months that I've been working with teams and individuals, is once people get that clear sense of what their superpower is, they can then shape it.
Yeah, so it's a real time for focusing on your strengths rather than trying to build up perceived areas of weakness at the moment, you reckon?
Yeah. There's sort of two schools of thought, isn't there? I mean, often people default, I notice that people default to weaknesses. So when, for example, I'm doing, say, a strength finder assessment, there'll almost be always be a question, Chris, about, and so what are my weaknesses? And when it comes to performance reviews or management or even ourselves, we're sort of like, oh, okay, we need to work at what we really struggle with. The flip side is to understand what we do really well. So, for example, I was coaching somebody earlier this morning, and he's just got this analytical brain. He's just incredible in terms of the way that he can analyse different things, and he really loves process and systems. Bit of a quieter guy. So, I mean, part of that is being able to, I suppose, understand that and see that, and then look for opportunities like a heat-seeking missile to be able to lend that strength to a project, to be able to shape work around that. And I think given our current climate, where people are sort of probably going to be staying in jobs for longer, part of that aspect of keeping energized is how can you shape your current role so that you can do more of what you're really good at and then enjoy it.
Yep. Yeah, I completely agree with that, mate. For people kind of who are starting to step into more of a leadership role and maybe they don't understand where their strengths lie so much, how can they start thinking about that? What are there any practical tips that you have for them to start to develop an awareness of their strengths?
Yeah, I kind of like I use the analogy of like needing three different points, but like those navigators where they navigate using the stars and they'd have a point there, a point there, and a point there, and it sort of gives them a direction. And I mean, the simplest way is to do some reflective exercises around thinking of a time where you've been really motivated. Perhaps it's been at work. Time has flown. Maybe you got a pat on the back, and all those things. You're really enjoying that sort of work. And once you sort of think about it, jot the examples down as to what you've been doing, where it's been, and actually take the time to sit and reflect and write some stories down. So I mean, that's really the simplest starting point, and that's sort of featured in books like What Colour Is My Parachute? That's kind of like the guru book around careers, or even Simon Sinek's Find Your Why. And then the other things you can do are do some form of assessment, like a strength finder assessment. And then the other thing is actually pick people that know you well and just simply ask them, what do you think I'm doing? I do really well. And then join the dots. And really gives people that sort of corrals it to actually something concrete.
Yeah, and obviously kind of the most powerful is to take all three of those options and to put them together for you. Cool. We want to be invaluable in this time where there's a bit of chaos going on for us, but sooner or later things are going to start to get back into a routine as well and become a little bit more kind of normalized, in parentheses, for whatever that new normal looks like. How can we ensure that we remain invaluable or continue to maybe become more valuable as we move into that period of time?
Yeah, it's funny. I was writing a blog post and reading a book about how long does it take to form a new habit. You probably know with the clients that you work with. Sorry, how long you might give them some advice exercises. How long does it take to start becoming unconscious? And in James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, they found it's 66 days. It's not 21, it's 66 days, which I thought really fascinating. And then I thought about, well, how long have we been in lockdown? We've been in lockdown, I'd say roughly 54 days. That's what I calculated, give or take. Well, we've almost had to transition into a whole new set of habits. And so I suppose part of being invaluable is consciously thinking, all right, so we've got 66 days now to start building some new habits. Do we just wing it and hope that things will just work out fine? Or do we spend a bit of time thinking about what we've learned through this process and then put a few things in place around how we want that? I hate to say, the new, whatever, the new normal. It's cliche. Whether it is around that work-life balance, is it going to be looking like people will be doing more work from home? This whole connectivity aspect and using the likes of the internet. What are some of the things that we've learned, and how do we then transition into that new space? And as a leader, I think part of that is understanding that people will go through that journey at different paces. Some people are able to adapt really well and really quickly. In fact, it's one of the strengths in the Strength Finder assessment, adaptability. Other people perhaps take a bit more time. So, but if you're returning back to your clinic, gym, and your workplaces, just my viewpoint is give yourself a break and realise that it's going to take a bit of time to transition back.
Yeah, and I think with that as well as you said, it's important to take that time to do some analyzing and to do some strategy around it as well, just rather than kind of leaping back into things feet first. So it's I spent a whole lot of time this morning blocking out blocks of time in my schedule over the next 6 or 8 weeks to catch up with my staff and to spend a little bit of time kind of sitting down and doing some strategic thinking about how things are going and the direction that we want to take them in moving forward. And sometimes you feel bad about that because it doesn't always seem to get you immediately closer to a goal. But I think, like as you've been saying, being patient with it and deploying a little bit of long-term thinking is really helpful. So kind of utilizing these as almost kind of long game sessions that you're putting in there it's a helpful way for me to be thinking about it and using it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's I like what you say about that long game approach. That like being deliberate. Gosh, that reminds me of that one of the last.
Yeah. It's amazing where I get all these ideas from, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah, that was very good. Yes. But that whole feeling guilty thing, that's really interesting you say that, because again, when it comes to one-on-one coaching, I remember one chap, one leader I was coaching. He was in a senior role. He said, "This is the first time I've actually had an hour to spend on myself," and he was feeling a little bit guilty about that, almost self-indulgent. And I kind of explain it as a bit like a decompression chamber when you're rushing around and really busy, and suddenly you've got this 1 hour block that's all about you. Gives you the opportunity to think about, instead of the day-to-day dramas, how do you work the best and what do you need to do. It's a pretty amazing place to be, and often just a couple of little tweaks here and there it's amazing the difference that it makes.
Exactly. And I mean, you referenced Sam's podcast earlier, but there's other episodes of the show that kind of talk more about that concept. I mean, Joel Bouzade is all about leading yourself first, and I talked to Elizabeth McNaughton as well, who just dropped the line on me that was amazing. It was you lead others to where you are. So if you're not spending that time on yourself and working on yourself, then actually you're not going to step up as a leader, and you're not going to be as effective in bringing other people and kind of moving them forward as well.
I feel like I've got to drop a line on you now, Chris. Yeah.
Go for it.
Okay, here we go. You ready? Don't injure yourself by falling into your next career. How's that?
Oh, I like that from a leadership perspective, but also with my physiotherapy hat on as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because again, when working with people around their career, of which always comes up in the leadership space, well, 90% of the time, most people go, "Oh, I fell into it. How did you get into this?" "Oh, I fell into it." Well, yeah, it's interesting, eh? So there you go. That's my one-liner for you.
Okay, good. I'll cut that into a clip for you, Grant. Grant, this is all about improving our leadership abilities and our ability to navigate challenge. But was there a time that you didn't lead well? And if so, are you happy to share that?
Yeah, I knew you were going to ask that question. In fact, yeah, you sent it through beforehand, I think. It's I thought about that one. There was a time that really stood out for me, and that was when I was I was about 20. I was promoted into a leadership role. I'd started in between my second and third year at university as a salesperson, in fact, a door-to-door salesperson, and I discovered I had a bit of a knack for it, and pretty much didn't go back to university, but became a real top-performing salesperson. And then, of course, they promote you. And so they promoted me to a manager. And then I got promoted to effectively starting my own office and running an office with 2 receptionists, 15 salespeople, and a telemarketing department of 9. And I was a disaster as a leader. And I was thinking about it. What was it that? I mean, first up, I didn't have any idea of what it actually meant. I mean, I just sort of kept stumbling on, and opportunities sort of presented themselves, and the skill to actually lead a team and people is a completely different skill to being technically competent. And on top of that, it got me thinking, what would have helped, and what did I learn? And one thing I learned was the importance of, I suppose, mentoring, and making sure that there's people around us that support us, so that before getting to those situations where I think it's called the Peter principle, Chris, where you get promoted to a position of incompetence.
Yeah.
We get to that point that hopefully someone might flag something beforehand, or at least give you a little bit of an insight to, from my point of view, slow down and actually sort of plan it out a bit better. My leadership, if I think about it, was not that great. It was pretty fragmented, disorganised, and huge learning curve, I can tell you that.
Grant, what's influenced your thinking about leadership the most in the last couple of years?
Yeah, it's probably my own experience of experience of leaders. What I mean by that is I think of one of my managers when I was at Massey University. She was younger than me, but she just had this incredible ability to lead and inspire others. And she actually became one of my mentors. I normally try to keep a couple of mentors or work with a couple of mentors. The reason why was because I just loved how she could bring so many different people on board. And I remember one conversation with her was around how she could tailor it to an individual. Like no individual was the same. So, whether it be managing me or managing another person in the team, she just had this amazing knack of being able to tailor it for that person. So seeing examples like that and experiencing that is definitely something that has shaped me. And then, of course, there's the ones which weren't so great, which you then use on the flip side and go, well, that's interesting, isn't it? And from a work point of view, I mean, I suppose it comes back to that whole aspect that people, I mean, you probably heard the saying, people don't leave a job, they often leave a manager. But just seeing those examples of really good and experiencing them of really good management is just awesome. I think it's just an incredible skill set to have, because you literally are shaping people's lives. It's amazing.
Yeah, and hopefully these conversations are helping do the same for people. Grant, what should leaders be doing right now?
Yeah, from my point of view, there's really 2 things. The first is really around their staff and their teams coming back. This, as you said at the start, this is level 2. Suddenly, there's this shift, people thinking, or at least coming back to work. Speaking to one of the people I'm working with this just before this call, he absolutely loves it at home. He's just thriving, and he's saying his team loves it at home. Through to other people that are just almost can't wait to get back into the office. And so I suppose one of the things I think is just to check in with staff and see where their heads at, and then just tailor the support to it. The flip side of that, of course, Chris, is that when it comes to business, it's without putting too fine a point on it. There's the hard reality, the nuts and the bolts, the money in the bank, and how to offset that with, you might say, just caring for everybody, which is a juggle. And so I think communication is really key. So in the face of uncertainty, people often default, but like strengths and weaknesses, back to the worst case scenario. So if things are a bit dicey, people will be thinking about it. People will be thinking, is my job on the line here? So being able to regularly check in and communicate that, so that before it even starts festering in people's mind, I think is really important. And likewise, if there is some change ahead, just be upfront and have those conversations, so that people do at least know where they stand.
Yeah. Thank you, Grant. And Grant, I know you've got a couple of resources available to help people get a little bit more clarity about how they can become invaluable. Where can people grab them from? Yeah,
you can go to www.spark.co.nz or grantverhoeven.com, and just download the confusion to clarity guide I put together. That includes, the different activities around how to get that clarity on what you do the best, or just reach out. My details are up on the website, or look me up on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear from you. And look, I suppose I just want to acknowledge you, Chris, for what you're doing, which is, that around leaders not just going through this, but coming out the other side better. Which it sounds, my viewpoint is, it sounds really easy to do and quite cliche, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I think that but I think it is really, it's a great aspiration to have, particularly through this last 8 weeks.
Well, thank you. Yeah. I appreciate the words, mate. Grant Verhoeven, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, no, well, it's a pleasure. And thanks, Chris, for having me.